Hello everyone. In this section of Industrial Relation class, we discuss about chapter 15, Pay and Working Time, shifting contour of the employment relationship. Pay and working time are central to the employment relationship, forming what is known as the wage labor bargain, a concept in industrial relation that goes beyond simple economics to include social, political, and historical influence. This complexity makes a pay contested issue, influenced not only by labor supply and demand, but also by societal debates over job value, fair income distribution, and payment criteria like seniority or merit. Working time traditionally defined the boundary between work and personal life, but recent shifts have challenged this standard, particularly with the rise of flexibility hours and reduced pay premium for non-standard hours. With more dual-earned households, balancing work and family responsibility has become a critical concern, leading to AR increasing engagement with other disciplines. We begin our discussion about pay. So pay is a central component in both IR theory and practice, defining the employment relationship where employees provide labor in exchange for wages under the authority of employers. Actually, there is no single universally accepted theory regarding pay determination or a consensus on the most suitable pay practice for various circumstances. But we have some big theory to discuss in this section. We have the economic approach, views pay as a market-driven element with wages adjusting based on labor supply and demand to ensure an appropriate balance. Also, human capital theory consider pay as a return on individual classification, such as education and experience, supporting a free market approach with minimal intervention. The institutional approach emphasizes the productivity of the organization, not just the individual worker, considering pay as an outcome of competing interests among unions, government employers, and workforce groups. Pay is quite by a classification system that considers factors such as skill, seniority, responsibility, experience, and performance, differing by sector, workforce, and country. And the last theory that we have is by Rubery 1997. So pay is viewed as a social constructed signal of social status set by societal norms about the value and fairness of work. So pay function as both a tool to allocate labor and a motivational component within an organization, forming a significant part of organizational costs. The decline of joint regulation. So the prevalence of collective bargaining in UK workplace has sharply declined since the 1960s and 1970s when it covered approximately 80% of workplace. By the 1990s, many employers had withdrawn from joint agreement and industry level agreement collapsed, reducing collectivity bargaining. Until the 2004 with 35%. This decline is linked to decreasing union membership as well as factors like workplace size, sector, and ownership type. The private sector has seen particularly low levels of collective bargaining, with most pay determined unilaterally by management, while the public sector has maintained stable levels of coverage. This shift raises concern over fairness and organizational performance, as fewer workers are able to address pay and workplace issues, potentially leading to weaker bargaining position and missed opportunity for input that could benefit the employers. Regulation of low pay. The UK system of exclusive pay determination has led to persistently high level of low wage work despite years of economic growth. Between 1977 and 2001, low-paid jobs, those earning less than two until thirds of the median wage, rose from 12% to over 20%, with 21% of employees still in low-wage work in recent years. While policies like the 1999 minimum wage and the establishment of low pay commissions sought to address low pay, enforcement challenge persists, especially in sectors employing migrant and informal workers. Additionally, in work benefit, such as tax credit, may inadvertently reduce incentive for both employers to raise wages and employees to demand higher pay. The absence of widespread collective bargaining means firms often use the minimum wage as the standard rate, eliminate pay scale, or avoid restoring pay differential, which weakens workers' bargaining power. These structures support parasitic employers who rely on public benefit to subsidize low wages, making it difficult for unions to promote effective wage bargaining among low-paid workers. Gender pay issues. Persistent gender discrimination in pay practices shown by a significant pay gap and women's concentration in low-paid part-time jobs. As we can see on the figure, slow convergence in male and female average pay from 66% in 1984 to 78% in 2006, periods of wage catch up for women in 1987 until 1992 and 2002 until 2005. Part-time female workers have seen slower wage improvement compared to full-time female workers, increasing the pay gap between these groups. Many part-time jobs are low-paid, affecting women disproportionately. Female-dominated workplaces face pay penalties with an 18% penalty for low-skill roles in all-female setting. Employers can create different pay scale for various job types, often aligning higher pay scale with male-dominated roles. This issue is partly addressed in the public sector but persists in many workplaces. UK government has some policy initiative to address the issues. First is Women and Work Commission. The WWC was unable to recommend mandatory equal pay reviews. It encouraged the government to lead by example in the public sector, and the recommendations include promoting girls' career options, easing mother return to work, improving part-time job quality, and supporting women entrepreneurs. But progress in implementing recommendation has been limited, with some initiatives relying on voluntary participation, and only 34% of large private sector companies had conduct equal pay reviews by 2005. Use of variable pay scheme to address the pay issues. So pay scheme used to reward worker effort or performance through incentive-based payment. Common types include performance-related pay, share ownership schemes, and profit-related pay. Contrast with traditional pay structure, which use a standard rate. Among these, performance-related pay is the most common, present in nearly 40% of workplaces as of 2004, and is more prevalent in the private sector. Share ownership is used by 20% of workplace, particularly in the financial and foreign-owned sector, while profit-related pay is applied in 30% of workplace, largely in trading industry. Research drawing on agency and expectancy theories suggests that employees are motivated by higher pay when they perceive reliable performance measure and clear reward. However, in the public sector, many employees find performance measure find performance related pay divisive and unmotivating, as it sometimes undermines teamwork. Studies suggest that the impact of variable pay schemes may be less about motivation alone and more about reshaping job design, performance expectation, and work norms. The shift highlight the insight from industrial relations rather than purely psychological approaches may be more relevant for understanding and improving this scheme effectiveness. Theory supporting variable pay. We have agency theory or economics suggests employee exert higher effort in response to higher pay, assuming reliable performance measure. Also, we have expectancy theory or psychology, emphasize employees' perception of reward satisfaction and likelihood of receiving the reward. And last, we have goal setting theory or psychology also, highlight motivation through clear, challenging goal and employee commitment. We enter our discussion about working time. So working time arrangement play a crucial role in industrial relations by influencing the wage effort balance in employment relationship. This arrangement affect how employees trade their labor hour for wages, impacting both work productivity and the connection between work life and personal or family life. As working hours become more varied, balancing dual-income household need has become a prominent concern. Employees increasingly seek control over their schedule to manage work alongside personal and family responsibilities, making flexible working time is essential. Especially in the UK, working time policies focus more on wage effort arrangement, where time serves as the basis for pay. Collective bargaining in the UK has typically focused on setting standard working hours and the condition for overtime, which limits employers' control over labor time and determines overtime pay eligibility. There is a shift away from time-based pay to output or performance-based pay, where employees assume more responsibility for work organization and outcome. High-performance work systems, which often demand long hours and prioritize productivity, have led to an increase in unpaid overtime. This has blurred boundaries between work and personal life, often compromising employees' work-life balance. Employers increasingly use fragment and part-time work schedule to improve productivity and cut costs, paying employees only during peak productivity periods. This approach is especially common in service sector where labor is closely aligned with customer demand. Traditional arrangements that provide extra pay for non-standard hours, like evening or weekend shift, are being challenged by extended operating hours and flexible scheduling. Organizations are redefining normal working hours, reducing the need for overtime and unsocial hour pay. As the 24/7 economy grows, many organizations have adapted flexible work schedule, especially for part-time employees, to cover non-standard hours without extra pay. This change has normalized flexible scheduling and diminished the distinction between standard and non-standard work hours. Increased participation of women and students has driven for diverse work schedule, with organizations adjusting definition of normal working hours. Advances in technology, such as email and mobile device, have blurred boundaries between work and personal time, enabling flexibility but also creating expectation for availability. While the 1990s saw an intensification of work hours and blurred boundaries between work and life, recent trend indicates a stabilization of working time and increased focus on addressing work-life balance issues. Changes in working time arrangement and pay structure signal an evolving employment relationship influenced by practices in both Europe and the USA. The shift emphasized flexibility, productivity-oriented work environment, but also bring challenges for employee well-being and traditional employment norms. During the 1980s and 1970s, the UK developed a unique position within the EU labour market known for both very long and very short working hours, deviating from standard full-time practices. This reputation for extended working hours was driven by several factors, including a lack of national regulation on maximum hours until 1998, with the IU's Working Time Directive introduced a 48-hour limit, albeit with option for voluntary opt-outs. Additionally, the UK had a high percentage of full-time workers logging extended hours compared to the I country, further encouraged by a culture of unpaid overtime, which became increasingly common in the 1990s. On the other hand, the UK labour market also includes a significant number of part-time roles with relatively short hours often associated with lower job quality. The UK government highlighted this range of working hours as a sign of flexibility and personal choice, supporting work-life balance by offering various options, especially for women who made up a substantial share of part-time workers due to personal preference. However, these choices were often shaped by external pressure, such as work culture valuing long hours, presenteeism, and limited access to affordable childcare, which placed constraint on working mothers. Over the over the past decades, there has been a shift toward more stable working hours, with improved work-life balance options across different job styles. Still, as economic conditions change, it remains essential to evaluate both the benefits and challenges of the UK's working time arrangement, with particular attention to safeguarding employee protection in the face of rising unemployment. During the 1990s, the average working hour for full-time employees in the UK showed a slight upward trend before dipping slightly in the late 1990s and 20s. By 2006, a smaller percentage of workplace reported staff working beyond 48 hours, and the prevalence of Monday to Friday work schedule held steady, while the share of workplace open 6 or 7 days a week increased slightly. The move toward 24 per 7 economy continue with an increasing number of business open every day, creating greater pressure on employees to meet workload demands. Union representation also declined, further weakening protection against excessive work hours, and many workers view long hours as essential for promotion. Highly skilled workers like those in IT often work more than 10 hours per day, with advance in technology allowing employers to expect constant availability. For low-wage workers, long hours became necessary to earn a sustainable income. As an example, Tony B described a care assistant working over 48 hours per week without extra weekend pay, despite the physical demanding nature of the job. For many, long hours may be preferable to job offering only a few days unpredictable hours as they provide a more stable income. Part-time work and employment relationship. Part-time work in the UK is primarily found in lower-paid service sector jobs, differing from countries like the Netherlands and Sweden, where part-time opportunities are more prevalent across various job levels. While UK policies now allow parents to request part-time hours, these rights are less robust compared to those in the Netherlands and Sweden, where regulations support shorter full-time hours and job security for part-timers. The prevalence of long working hours in the UK makes it challenging to integrate part-time employees into full-time roles, leading to a concentration of part-time work among low-skilled occupations. Although part-time jobs can enhance work-life balance, especially for parents and students, they are often structured to prioritize employers' flexibility, which can create conflict for employees needing consistent schedule. As a result, many part-timers may find themselves needing to be available for work more frequently than those with standard contracts, complicating their ability to manage family commitment effectively. Availability of flexible work option. The availability of flexi-time option rose significantly from 30 42% to 53% between 2001 and 2006. However, the actual uptake this option has lagged behind, with only a modest increase to 27% from 24%. One reason for this limited uptake is that many employees, even those utilizing flexible work arrangement, perceive drawback associated with them. According to the 2006 WLB3 employee survey, a significant portion of flexible workers reported experiencing negative effects, including financial detriments and reduced work-life balance. Certain agreements, such as working from home or annualized hour, can particularly hinder work-life balance. The annualized hour system, which was expected to grow alongside the 24/7 economy, offers stable earning but can create challenges in implementation due to staff shortage and fluctuating demand. The lack of collective bargaining in much of the private sector also inhibits the spirit of such arrangement, as employees often seek reassurance that their interests will be protected through union representation. Overall, while flexible work options have become more available, their effectiveness in enhancing work-life balance remains questionable without adequate support and consideration for employees' needs. There are interactions between pay and working time, so the higher paid worker, professional and manager, are more likely to work long hours and overtime, although this overtime is often unpaid. Male manual workers work overtime less frequently but typically receive additional pay for it. Rising inequality in earning is linked to a concentration of work volume and income among higher paid workers, while low hourly pay is prevalent among part-time workers. Part-time workers miss out on skill development opportunities, receiving significantly less training than full-time workers. Part-time workers are more likely to have insecure jobs and less likely to be protected by trade unions with lower union membership rates compared to the full-timers. A significant portion of part-time workers are underemployed, working in jobs that do not utilize their skill or qualification. Part-time workers have less access to occupational pensions and may face disadvantage under the defined contribution scheme, which benefit from early investment. Case study: Company obligation to provide timely breaks by Letizia Tobin. An employee at a livestock company worked from 7 a.m. to 3 a.m. with a 1 hour break from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. However, during production periods, the work hours changed to 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. with a 2 hour break from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. According to Indonesian labor law, specifically the Job Creation Law and its amendments, the standard working hours are 7 hours per day for 6-day work weeks or 8 hours for 5 days week. The the company extend break during production complies with legal working hour, but the timing of the break may violate regulations since employees should receive a break after 4 consecutive hours of work. We have the analysis for this case, and we have four, four issues from this case. The first is working hours and the regulation. The change in working hours during production align with legal requirement as it adheres to the maximum working hours stipulated by law. However, the 2 hour break starting after 5 hours of work contravenes the legal requirement for break after 4 continuous hours. The second is impact on employee well-being. The extended break could initially seem beneficial, but it may negatively impact work-life balance. Employees may find themselves working longer hours without adequate rest in accordance with the regulation. This situation highlights the broader challenges of flexibility work arrangement, not always equating to improve work-life balance, similarly to finding in previous study. And the third is potential legal consequence. The company risks penalty for not providing adequate break. This could lead to financial liabilities and affect employees' morale if workers feel their rights are being compromised. And the last is industry standards. Comparing this scenario with the flexible working trend discussed earlier, it becomes clear that despite the company intention to adapt to production demand, they must balance operation it with compliance to labor law and the welfare of employees. Overall, this case underscored the complexity surrounding flexible work arrangement and the need for companies to ensure that such flexible does not come at the cost of legal compliance and employee welfare. Conclusion: the intricate relationship between pay and working time underscore the evolving landscape of employment. While pay continues to be a significant element influenced by economic, social, and political force, working time arrangements are reshaping work-life balance and productivity expectations. The decline of collective bargaining, persistent gender pay gaps, and the challenges faced by part-time workers highlight enduring disparities in pay structure. Variable pay scheme, while motivating for some, often lead to unintended consequences such as divisiveness in public sector. Simultaneously, the transformation of working time towards more flexible and non-standard schedule has emphasized productivity, but sometimes at the expense of work-life balance. The normalization of unpaid overtime and the blurring of work-life boundaries point to a need for better regulatory oversight to safeguard employee rights and well-being. Despite progress in policy supporting work flexibility, the effectiveness remains contingent on addressing employees' genuine needs and fostering equitable conditions. This evolving employment relationship demand continued attention to ensure balance between organization demand and the welfare of the workforce. That's all the material about chapter 15, peak and working time. And thank you for your attention. Goodbye.